While January wasn't my most prolific reading month ever, I have loved stepping into the Square journal and working out how its pages work well for review spreads. Stepping into a new journal size always requires a lot of experimentation, and coming from a traveler's size notebook for my last reading journal, this Square journal feels massive. So I have a lot of exploring to do. Hi, it's Erin. Thank you so much for joining me. There's something so exciting about getting to fill out all of my trackers for the first time, and we'll get to do a bit of that in this video, so I can't wait to get into it. I recently set up this nameplate page with my channel members on one of the private members only live streams, and that was so much fun, so I love how my nameplate is looking. But the first spread we'll actually make any changes to is this one. This is my books read tracker, and I'm just going to pop another notebook underneath this side of the book because I'm still very early on and so it doesn't quite sit flat yet. The month wasn't quite over when I was first filling these out, so it was actually the 27th of January, which means that my reading for the month wasn't totally finished, but we were pretty close to. And I did not get as much reading under my belt in January as I usually do, and I am completely okay with that. It was busy, it's been really hot, and I don't really like doing anything when it's really hot, so at this stage I had finished 4 books for the entire month, and that is much lower than my average, and I am so completely fine with that. I numbered them wrong here though. For some reason I jumped from 2 to 4, so it really should have been 3 and 4 for those other ones. I printed off some of my book covers for this setup with my home printer on some sticker paper rather than the sprocket because I wanted to do some bigger covers and I didn't want to use that much sprocket paper, it's pretty expensive. So I'm just popping down the book covers for the first 2 of our Paige Majors book club reads for this year. For January it was The Orphan Witch by Paige Crutcher, and for February it's Sorcery and Small Magics by Mega Ducey. For some reason both of those covers printed really quite wrong though. They're very streaky and colourful in a way they're not supposed to be, but I didn't want to print them again, so I'm just going to roll with it. The series tracker I think is going to make more sense to me the more I use it, so I wasn't totally sure what I was doing here. I just wanted to put down the Throne of Glass series because I had just finished one of them. Definitely should have waited for my gel pen to dry before I went over that with my marker to indicate where I was up to, but that's alright. We're going to flip ahead forward now into my January tracking pages. And I'm going to pop down the book covers in a smaller size. This is actually the same size as what the sprocket prints would be if I printed them out and cut it into 4 like I normally do for my reading journal. Just popping down the covers for all of the books that I have read all or part of for the month, and I'll pop my star rating stamp underneath each one too, so that as I finish these books I can come back and add my star rating once I've worked out what it should be. I wasn't totally sold on my own placement of the book covers here. I was thinking this will be a bit odd if I want to add another one, like there's not really room, so I was trying to put things kind of left oriented here on this column next to the progress calendar, but I'm gonna decide that I hate that and move them later on, so if that's stressing you out, don't worry, me too. Now we can update the progress calendar, which is kind of showing where I start and finish books and how long it takes me to read them. I don't necessarily read every day, usually I do, but throughout January I haven't been able to. But being able to see my reading tracked on a calendar like this gives me a really good idea of how many books I can reasonably manage in a month, which really helps when it comes to putting books on hold through the library and knowing how many it's reasonable to have downloaded at a time, because I don't want to be taking up borrows that other people could be using, especially if I don't actually get around to the book. And I think that library books have a certain number of times they can be borrowed before they need to be purchased again too, so I don't want to mess with that either. We've got a little visit from Mitsu, my wonderful reading journal supervisor, who was insistent it was time to go on lunch. Also, yes, I did write Tower of Dawn instead of The Orphan Witch on that second line. I guess I was just zoned out. They have very similar initials, so it threw me off. I think another reason I haven't been reading as many books this month is because I usually do quite a bit of my reading on audiobook, and I do love audiobooks and I have no shade towards them, but right now I found a podcast I really like and I've gone all the way back to the beginning of their back catalogue, and so I guess I've just been listening to that more than books, and that's totally fine too. This green line we're drawing right now is for Onyx Storm, which it was only the 27th, but I was pretty confident at that point that I would not be finishing the book before the end of the month, so I was happy to just go ahead and make it go all the way to the 31st, because the likelihood that I'll be done with it by then is very, very low. But I have that one on Kindle, I paid for it, so nobody's waiting for my library hold, so that's okay. I've decided at this point to move my book covers from this column over a little bit further so that things aren't looking so crowded and unbalanced, and I'm really glad that I did that. If I do end up reading any more books than these for the month and we come back to the reading journal later on, then I will pop it over the top of the flower down below and just add a little bit of sticker paper with the star rating on it and call it a day. It's actually really interesting. I'm always so willing to be very forgiving with myself in the reading journal. Before we move on though, a word from today's sponsors, Luisa. Valentine's Day is approaching at a gallop, and there's truly nothing that makes a better gift than a classic and timeless piece of jewelry. Whether that gift is for a loved one or for yourself is totally up to you. Ana Luisa are a New York-based company who make jewelry that's made to last and made with the planet in mind, with pieces for all sizes, gender expressions, and styles. They're serious about sustainability, completely transparent about their materials, and rigorously test all their jewelry pieces to ensure longevity, comfort, and water resistance. I personally like my jewelry pretty dainty, and I've got a lovely capsule collection of Ana Luisa pieces that I love to mix and match, so I thought I'd show you a few of my current favorites in case you're looking for some inspiration. The Celine Eternity ring is one of the most versatile pieces I own. With its simple sparkly band, it stacks really beautifully with other rings, or it looks really lovely worn alone too. Eternity rings also symbolize eternal love, so is that not perfect for Valentine's Day? I've had these Elise Huggy hoops for about 6 months, and I basically haven't taken them off since I got them, so you know they're durable as well as pretty. But I've got some new contenders for my everyday earrings. These are the Frida Huggy hoops, and the tiny pearl charms are so stylish. If I'm feeling less classic elegance and more magical girl, then I'll switch to the Celeste Huggies with their little star and moon charms. I'm a silver girl at heart, but I love these so much I actually have them in gold as well, so I can switch between them depending on my outfit. When I'm wearing the gold ones, I love pairing them up with the May moon pendant. The celestial theme is too perfect, and the little pop of mother of pearl on the pendant is so pretty. Regardless of which earring I'm wearing, you can bet I've got the Zara studs in my second piercing. I genuinely haven't taken these off since I got them, they just stay in my ears all the time. Ana Luisa's last sale of the season is live right now with up to 25% off their most loved jewelry, so the timing couldn't be better to shop for Valentine's Day and save, but the sale is for a limited time only, and Ana Luisa's products have been known to sell out, so you'll want to be snappy. Just make sure to use my link in the description so they know it was me who sent you. Thank you so much to Ana Luisa for sponsoring this video. Now, back to the reading journal. Since I covered up those star ratings with the sticker paper, I can now add new ones over the top so that they're in the right place. And then we'll move on to the reviews for the first couple of books for the year. I wasn't feeling super into the idea of collaging every single book that I read this year. I just feel like that was a lot of work for the last reading journal, so I'm toning things back a little bit unless I love a book or unless I have the perfect ephemera or stickers or washi tapes for it. Or if it was a book club book, because then I feel like I'm going to want a whole page. But for the rest of them, for the ones that are just kind of lukewarm, okay, or potentially didn't enjoy, I'm going to do a much simpler review style. And for that, I'm going to divide the page into 2 columns. This is really just an adaptation of the way I've always done my really basic reviews. I did a lot of these back in my first reading journal back in 2022-23, but I am leveling up the size of my book covers because I've really enjoyed having some larger ones lately. These ones I printed on my home printer, and these ones the color came out okay, so that's lucky, but I have actually matched the size of them to the sprocket print because I feel like that's a good size for this journal. Something I'm adding to my tracking, although I forgot for a couple of books in this setup, is the year of publication for the book. I just think that's an interesting thing to include. And those rating stickers right there. You might remember last year I used the core pile rating system and I made some stickers of those for myself. This year I've made my own rating system named Peach. I have a whole video explaining how it works in case you're interested in looking into that, but also I've just recently made some printables of these stickers available so that you can use them too, but there is a catch. You have to sign up to my Substack. I'm launching a fortnightly newsletter over on Substack where I'm going to be sharing reading recommendations and video updates and exclusive giveaways just for Substack subscribers. Also, anytime I have news or announcements, the Substack subscribers are going to find out first. If you're keen to sign up, there's a link down in the video description to sign up for the Substack, and don't forget you'll get the Peach and Mitsu rating stickers as a little bonus freebie. Enough about me, let's talk about the books. So the first one I'm reviewing here for the year, the first book I finished for the year, was Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas, which is from the Throne of Glass series. The last time I read a book from this series was in March last year, so it's safe to say it's not grabbing me the way it has for a lot of people, but I did find this one pretty enjoyable. I think, as much as most people don't seem to like the character, Kael's journey is really interesting to me. But on the whole, this series hasn't grabbed me in the way that the ACOTAR series did. I know that people have different feelings about the different SJM properties, but yeah, this one's just not the top for me. I haven't read Crescent City yet. Maybe this year, we'll see. I'm giving this one 3.5 stars, which is, I think, a pretty good rating. Anything that's 3 and above for me generally means that I enjoyed it on some level. This is book 7 out of 8 though, so I don't want to tell you too much about what happens because it's just going to be spoilers all over the place. So moving on to the next one, which is Flyaway by Kathleen Jennings. Big shout out to Virginia, who recommended this one to me in the comments on my December reading video. I have never read an Australian book like this, and the author is actually from my city, which is pretty cool. This book explores the concept of Australian Gothic, which is a pretty new concept to me, but one I find really intriguing, especially because this book was set in my state, but it explores a side of living in Queensland that is completely foreign to me, with folklore that I've never heard of, and the barren isolation of some of the towns out west. This book was so creepy, and it really just throws you into the story and lets you work out what's going on for yourself as you go, which is something I quite often really enjoy in a story. I did spend quite a bit of the book a little bit confused, and it did also give me one particularly memorable nightmare, which doesn't usually happen for me. But on the whole, so enjoyable and really, really beautifully written too. I've given it 3.5 stars. It also left me singing McGarity, which is the name of the folkloric creature I hadn't come across that's quite central to this book, to the tune of the song about McCavity from Cats for several days, so I really enjoyed that too. I've transferred my star rating over onto my progress tracker, so now we can move on to the next review page. This one's going to be a full page, and that's because it was our Page Majors book for January, and that's The Orphan Witch by Paige Crutcher. If you're not familiar with Page Majors, that is my book club that I run through the channel membership program here on YouTube, so if you have joined the channel on the Page Majors level, then you get access to my private Discord server, and we have a section of that server that is just for talking about books. And we have a book club in there too, and we read a different book per month. The books are suggested by the members of the book club, and then we have a chat at the end of the month, like a video call to discuss it right there in Discord. And we have the best discussions about these books. We actually just had our chat for The Orphan Witch today. Overwhelmingly, we weren't obsessed with this book. It wasn't like the worst thing I've ever read, and it wasn't anywhere near the best thing I've ever read either. But the concept we all felt had so much potential and just maybe wasn't executed to the best of its potential, unfortunately. It's about a witch called Persephone who doesn't actually know at the beginning that she is a witch. She just knows that she can accidentally make people hurt themselves when they look into her eyes. She grew up an orphan and had some bad experiences with her adoptive and foster families, but she finally gets in touch with some family and kind of goes down this pathway of trying to break an ages-long curse. And, you know, it's a lot of kind of cliched stuff for fantasy books, and I'm not necessarily against a cliche. I kind of love the fantasy tropes for a reason, but I just felt like this one didn't really try to do anything new with any part of anything. It was pretty forgettable, honestly, and I read the book pretty early in the month, and by the time we got to the end of the month and this chat, I had forgotten a lot of stuff. Visiting cat, which can only make talking about witchy books better, right? I didn't realize how much I'd forgotten until we had our chat about this book, and I realized that something I'd written in my response to the last of our discussion questions, which we'll get to on the screen here in a sec, was completely wrong because I'd just forgotten what happened. I'll never give you spoilers for the contents of a book in my voiceovers. If you read the review spreads on like what I've written on the page, then there will be spoilers in there, so please proceed with caution if you want to do that. But I'm going to give you a spoiler for this one for what I rated it, and that is 2.5 stars. So pretty lukewarm for me. It wasn't the kind of book that made me want to just give up on it altogether, and there was a character who lives in a magical library who was really fun, and he kind of made the book worth it for me, but it's not something that I would pick up again. It wasn't something that made me want to read stuff from this author again in the future. That said, I don't know, maybe she's got really good other stuff and I'll miss out for not knowing, but that's okay. So many books, so little time, you feel me? Also, the cover for this book is not supposed to have any pink on it. I don't know what was going on with my printer there. I just replaced all of the cartridges, so it shouldn't have looked like that. The book cover is mostly supposed to just be black, so I don't know, I've got the disco version on this page, but when we switch back over to the progress page, you'll see what it's actually supposed to look like. Typically, I don't decorate pages of books that I rate 2.5 stars, but because this one is for my Page Majors book club, I'm always willing to put a little bit more effort in, and I thought this sheet from STICKII with all these cute little witchy stickers was a pretty good match. Since I only managed to read 4 books in January, that means we've only got one review spread left to set up, and that is this one, A Sorceress Comes to Call by Kingfisher. This is my first time reading any of T. Kingfisher's books, and I've seen this one on a lot of people's lists of favorite books, recommended books on TikTok and on Instagram, and I was like, all right, that's a cute cover. I don't know anything much about it besides that you like it, but I'm gonna give it a go. And do you know what? It was my favorite read of the month. This is a really interesting take on like a Regency fantasy story, not in the way that Bridgerton, the TV series, is Regency fantasy in that they wear things that wouldn't have been worn and do things that wouldn't have been done, but in the way that this is like a Regency story, but magic exists in that universe at the same time. Our main character, Cordelia, is a 14-year-old girl, and her mother is a sorceress, and her mother uses her sorcery powers to control her daughter. They call it being made obedient. She's like, oh, I can't do anything bad or mother will make me obedient. And she's not allowed to have doors in her house. She's not allowed to have any privacy. Mother must know what she is up to all the time because mother must control her for the sake of societal appearances. Cordelia's mother sets her sights on a well-to-do gentleman and sets about trying to manipulate him into marrying her. But in doing so, she puts them in a situation where Cordelia is suddenly exposed to different ways of living and different viewpoints and starts to realize that maybe things are not all as they seem. I tell you what, this book has got a little bit of everything. It's got some romance, but it's not for the 14-year-old girl, thankfully. The romance is actually for a much older lady in her 50s or 60s, I can't quite remember. Either way, loved it. People can absolutely still fall in love and find new partners at that age. There's a whole chunk of this book that is quite horror-centric. It's like a little bit gory. There's murder, like there's violence, there's heartwarming friendship. It's quite a ride. I did this one on audiobook, and I also thought the audiobook was delivered quite beautifully. The narrator had to cover such a diverse group of people, and she did it so beautifully, so props to her. I suppose this one would fall under YA, although that did not come up under the genres that I had in my end of month wrap-up stats from Storygraph, so maybe not? I don't know actually. But I do know that I really liked it, and so if you've read other T. Kingfisher works and you want to recommend some to me in the comments, please go ahead. I've heard great things about A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, but I saw it was middle grade, and I don't know if that's a little bit too young for me, but I don't know, maybe this one counts as middle grade too, I'm not sure. This one, although it was fantastic, the H in the Peach rating system stands for heart for me, and this was a book that I really enjoyed, but I don't see myself reading it again in the future. I don't feel like I need all of my friends to read it so we can talk about it. I don't feel like it's going to become a comfort read for me, so this one is going to be a solid, actually it's 4.2 stars, but I've rounded it down to 4 as far as colouring in the stars because it's hard to do 0.2 of a star. On the flip side, in my Storygraph data, I have marked it as 2.5 stars, so I've kind of rounded it up by 0.05 of a star there. So it's interesting how all that stuff kind of plays out in your averages. I really like having all of my star rating and number rating stuff available at a glance on my progress page, so let's go back and update that. And then it's time to populate my stats page, which is also my cover page, the way I'm doing things currently in the reading journal, with all of my reading information for the month of January. Many thanks to Storygraph for having an app that I can track the stuff with. Not sponsored, that sounded like it was sponsored, but it's not. I read 4 books in January. On average, it took me 8 days to finish a book. All of those books were over 300 pages, and all of them were also fiction. 3 out of those 4 books I listened to the audiobooks, and only one of them I finished in the ebook format, so that means 75% audio, 25% digital. And funnily enough, the exact same stats for my library versus bought category, 75% bought, 25% library, which means only 1 library book this month, which is really below average for me. My page count was 524, which I'm assuming includes books that I have been reading but have not yet finished. And I racked up 51 hours worth of audiobook time, although I tend to listen around 1.3, 1.4 speed, so probably not actually 51 hours. Only 2 genres for me this month, fantasy and horror, which is the horror part really unusual for me. And my average rating was 3.44 stars. I've got a blank page there after a Sorceress comes to call that I'll just use for whatever my next book review is. It doesn't matter if it's not within the February pages for me. And now let's get stuck into my stats and progress spread for February. Coming from the Traveler's Notebook where I had to use like 6 pages to do this, it's actually so satisfying to be able to do all of this across 2 pages. But I felt like I didn't quite leave myself enough room for book covers and star ratings on the progress page in the January setup, so I'm trying to make sure I factor in some more space for those in this one. That's the beauty of DIY reading journaling, is that you can adapt and change things as you go and make them better, and I love that. With that in mind, I'm trying to go a little bit lighter on the decoration. I'm using lots of tapes from the Moonlit Blush Washi tape set that's from Notebook Therapy. Doesn't appear to be available right now or anymore, not sure which one. But they're always coming out with new stuff, so I'm sure they'll have something similar in the future. And I'm bumping my progress calendar over to the left a little bit so it kind of crosses the binding across the middle of the spread. I ended up with a chunk of leftover space on the stats page for January, so I thought I would try and make better use of that left page this time, move the pie charts down to the bottom of the page in a horizontal kind of row rather than a vertical column, and make this calendar just like take up a little bit less space on the right page so I've got heaps more room for adding book covers and star ratings for February. Granted, my reading slowed down a lot in January, so if I only read 4 books through February, I'm going to have potentially too much space, but I think I'd rather have too much space rather than not enough, because I don't love tip-ins, and so I try to avoid having to add extra paper to my journal to extend a page wherever possible. I toyed with the idea of stamping my February heading, but I decided to go with some hand lettering instead because I feel like, you know, February, Valentine's Day, I'm doing a pink theme even though it's a little bit more on the magical side than it is on the lovey-dovey side. I still thought it would be fun to do some fun pink brush lettering. So I'm doing that on the edge of my sticker paper for my Peach rating system stickers just because that was handy and waste not. I actually put some really light pencil lines on the sticker paper so I could try and use those to get my lettering to look fairly even, but then I went to erase those once I had the sticker down on the page and it did not go well. You can't really use, especially the kneadable eraser that I like to use, you can't really use that on this sticker paper. It kind of just makes the paper really dirty. So don't do what I did. Maybe try to use a different way to align your letters on the sticker paper rather than pencil, or just live with the pencil. Super happy with how the lettering turned out though. I think I did a pretty cute job on that. I also got these little witchy Marigo Nasuli stickers in my beautiful advent calendar that Kim gave me. I swapped advent calendars with a lovely stationery friend in the UK over Christmas, and these were in the one that I received from her and I love them so much. They're the perfect little matchy-matchy colour scheme to go with my pink washi tape theme, so I thought they would add just a little bit of a fun illustrative element here too. I didn't read any just straight romance books throughout January, and that is usually kind of my main area, so I definitely feel like I want to move more towards that in February and, you know, the month of Valentine's Day. I don't really do Valentine's Day. My partner and I tend to just ignore it. We've been together for nearly 19 years, and so we don't really need to Valentine's Day at this point. Every day is Valentine's Day, right? But it does make a cute journal theme, and if I want to read a bunch of romance novels, then book-themed witchy stationery, yeah, absolutely, it's a no-brainer. I'm not changing up any of the stats that I'm tracking for my February reading. I'm just using all the exact same ones that I used for last time. I enjoyed it and I didn't feel like there was anything wrong with it, so I won't change those until I feel like I get bored or I think of something that I want to include, and then I'll switch this up. But for now, it's not broken, so I'm not going to try and fix anything. As a big library user, I quite often have things on reserve on hold through the library, and it helps to have a reminder of those on the page too so that I don't forget about them in the depths of my phone. And that's what these little book covers that I've just printed out with my little HP Sprocket printer, that's what these are. These are my library hold books for the month. I don't like the term to be read, so I usually call this my maybe next, but I haven't gone ahead and put a heading on it for this page because I know what it is. And because they're in my library holds, there's a really solid chance that I will read all of them. In fact, technically, I finished reading Sorcery and Small Magics today, but it's the 1st of February, so it's not going into this video, it'll be in the next one. And that's our Page Majors book for February too, so if you're keen to also read it and get in on the discussion action in the Discord, join the channel, become a Page Mage, I'd love to have you. There's a join button next to the subscribe one down underneath, and there's also a link in the description. My other books that I've got lined up for this month are Love Story by Lindsay Kelk. I love her, she's wonderful. Also Seven Summers by Paige Toon. I adore Paige Toon and I haven't read any of her books in a couple of years, so it'll be good to get back to her style. And The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. Now this one I actually already started back in November or December on ebook, and I just did not have time to read, and my library hold expired before I got a chance to finish it. And then I found out libraries only get a certain number of borrows, and so I didn't want to borrow it again and not get to it again, so I'm switching to audiobook because that means the likelihood that I will actually get to finish it is much higher. We've flipped back a few pages here now. We're back at the end of my new journal setup pages, which are the ones, the trackers that kind of go for the whole year. I deliberately left myself a couple of extra blank ones because I quite typically will set up a journal and then like 3 weeks later be like, oh, I wish I'd included this. So I'm trying to build in that flexibility for myself now. I did it for my bullet journal too, leaving myself space to add things as I grow. I know originally with the bullet journal method, which is sort of kind of not really what I do for the reading journal, but similar, the idea is supposed to be threading, right? And you just say, well, this is going to continue on this page, but I like having them together. I don't know what to tell you, so I'm glad that I did that, and I'm adding here a did not finish page. I didn't choose to DNF very many books last year. I think it was only like 3 or 4, but I have noticed when you shelve things on Goodreads as did not finish, or likewise with Storygraph, they kind of just vanish from everything, and I can't really find out like what percentage I was at when I chose not to continue reading, and I like to remember why I chose not to continue reading, but I don't really want to leave a review. I don't really do that on the digital platforms, so I thought, why not have a page for it, Erin? That seems like a solution. I'm using all of the same stationery that I used to set up the rest of the reading journal at the very beginning here. So the Into the Library tapes from Notebook Therapy. I'm using a washi tape that's from London Gifties that I'm so sorry you can't get anymore. That's the green leafy one. The stained glass one I'm using vertically is from the 2023 Lucky Bag from Notebook Therapy, so you can't get that one anymore either. I'm so sorry. And then I'm dividing the page into 9 little areas, and those are going to be where I stick a book cover and a tiny explanation of where I reached in the book and why I decided not to finish it. Because you know how sometimes you're like, this book is not for me and I'll never come back, but at other times you're like, I just think now is not the right time for me to be reading this book and I'd like to resume it later. I'd like to have somewhere to note that down. And now I do. On the page before this, I have my bookshelf tracker, which we're not going to fill out any of in this video, but same thing with that. I've left a blank page next to it so I can expand it if I want to, and likewise with the did not finish. If I find I DNF more than 9 books, which seems unlikely, then I have room to grow. And here's a little flip through from start to finish. I'm going to show you all of the beginning of the year tracking pages for this one, as well as the pages that we set up together today. I'd love to know what your favourite read of January was. Let me know in the comments which book you enjoyed the most, and if you've read any of the books that I read in January and you have thoughts, please share them down below too. I'd love to hear what you think. As we were flipping through, I reached my book bingos here and realised I can colour in one of these squares. I'm going to do the fantasy one, and then we'll continue with the flip through. I hope January was a wonderful reading month for you, and I hope February is even better. Don't forget to check out Ana Luisa's last sale of the season with up to 25% off their most loved jewellery for a limited time for Valentine's Day. There's a link to Ana Luisa and the sale in the description to save you some time. May your February and your Valentine's Day be sparkly as heck. If you've made it all the way to the end of this video, make sure you leave me your favourite pink emoji in your comment. And in case you're keen to keep watching, on the screen right now there is a link to my reading journal playlist for this year, as well as the flip through video for both of my journals from last year, so you can see every single book that I read in 2024. There were 96 of them.